Hello, oboe reed makers! Sooner or later, you confront a burning reed making topic. Maybe you are doubting the quality of your cane, or wondering whether you should use a machine or make reeds by hand. Or you suspect your staple and shape combination could be more successful. Perhaps you would like to get those old neglected knives sharpened and sharpen up your knife skills while you're at it. What if you got to hang out with the world's best reed making experts and find out how they solve these issues? Well, now you can. I'm Jeanine Krause from JK Double Reed Making, introducing the first season of the Oboe Reed Master series, which is part of the Dynamic Reed Maker program. This is a fantastic way to dive deep into the reed making questions that have always baffled you. Ask the master. In this 10-session series, it includes live and interactive calls inside the JK Double Reed Making Zoom Read Room. Each Oboe Reed Master will be joining twice, with at least a week between the two sessions. This gives you a chance to digest the topic and try things out so that you can return to the second session to share your own results, ask questions, and dive even deeper into the topic. I am so pleased to take a virtual trip from Hofheim near Frankfurt, Germany, all the way to California to interview our very first Oboe Reed Master, Steve Hammer, in preparation for the inaugural season of this wonderful series. Steve plays pretty much anything you can call an oboe and also recorders. He's played in great orchestras all over the world, including most recently at the Metropolitan Opera in New York before the Corona situation suspended concert events. He's probably best known for his leadership in many of the most important Baroque ensembles in the United States. He's been principal oboist for the Bach Ensemble with Joshua Rifkin, which is where we met, the Handel and Haydn Society, Boston Baroque, Musica Angelica, Blue Hill Bach, the American Bach Soloists, and Baroque Music Festival, dare I say it, Corona del Mar. Steve has contributed so much to the oboe world, especially in terms of historical performance practice. He is a champion of musical rhetoric of the Baroque period. He builds oboes in collaboration with Joel Robinson, and he is endlessly experimenting and exploring relationships not only in the oboes, but also with reeds, which is why I have asked him to tackle the topic of optimizing shape, staple, and oboe combinations for the Oboe Reed Master series. Thank you for inviting me into your studio. Tell us where you are.
Well, I'm in the beautiful San Fernando Valley of Los Angeles, where we've lived for 4 years now, in my garage.
What's most important to you, the way you feel when you're playing or the way you sound?
Well, I think the two go together. If you're comfortable, then you're making a centered sound and you can do anything you want with it. Ideally, I want to feel that it's not an oboe, that it's kind of an extension of voice or blows as easily as a recorder or a flute or something like that. So, but with the added advantage of there being some traction that I can grip and put extra intensity into the sound when I want to. I like to be able to play with no intensity and sound effortless or add in the intensity at will with how I'm blowing and how I'm gripping the reed.
Yeah, that sounds luxurious.
It is luxurious. It doesn't happen too often that it happens so easily, but sometimes you get in the zone.
Yeah.
It feels good.
What priorities and requirements do you have from your reeds in general? Which ones are the same no matter which instrument? And which of these priorities and requirements shift based on the different factors like which oboe you're playing and which repertoire, which ensemble size, these kinds of things?
Well, obviously, when you're playing with the bigger ensemble, multiple strings, trumpets, whatever, you need to just make more sound and probably play with less subtlety. So those reeds are going to be have more amplitude, more space inside, and more opening. Take more energy to drive the bore. When you're playing oboe da caccia or oboe d'amore, that's generally less true. Caccia, I like to be just as easy and fluent as possible. For that reason, I use more of a bassoon style reed, which is a very smooth scrape. Although a good caccia reed can make some sound too. For classical, it's I'm looking for a kind of fatness in the sound. The classical oboe tends to be a bit laser-like if you're not careful. And the conductors can complain, or your colleagues. So we had in my wind group in the 80s and early 90s, the Amadeus winds, the bassoons and horns had a saying about the upper oboes and clarinets: lasers lie low. They wanted us to be as mellow as possible to blend with their, and they were not shy about expressing that view either. So that has stuck with me. I try to avoid the laser quality in the classical.
What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say reed making?
Oi. Endless fun.
That wasn't the first thing that came to mind. Do you have a reed making philosophy, and has it changed over the years that you've been playing and making reeds?
It has changed. I tend to be more impatient than I should be with reeds. So I've had to learn to pace myself. I used to take a reed and keep working on it and demand that it get better right away, and would even take my reed making tools into rehearsals and scrape away furiously and would end up ruining it. So, and I've learned that in a way, quantity is better than quality. If I have 20 reeds and available, then it's likely that one of them will be functional. But so I try to be more Zen-like in my approach.
Well, that's interesting. I like that idea. What do you enjoy about reed making?
Um, when it's working, it's problem solving, and I enjoy trying to figure out what it is that's key. You know, like a sculptor, where you take away everything that isn't a beautiful woman. You take everything away that isn't a beautiful reed from the reed.
What is your least enjoyable part of reed making?
When I have one that's starting to play and it cracks, they always sound best right before they crack.
Oh yeah, of course.
That's true of oboes too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, my teacher when I was in high school was Robert Sprinkle in the Rochester Philharmonic, and he said the test of a good reed is drop it on the floor. If it breaks, it was a good reed.
Oh, yeah. So you've done a lot of teaching yourself. So my question is, in your opinion, what is the biggest mistake that students make with their reeds?
Well, kind of the same thing. It always worries me when I see someone turn up with one reed in their case, which they do from time to time, or with, well, in a way that's worse than no reeds, because then you have a certain complacency, and you're overly dependent on this one inanimate object that could betray you at any moment.
Do you have a set of formal or informal absolute reed truths?
Can you give me some examples?
So one of my reed truths is that I imagine when I'm scraping the tip of the reed, that there is an invisible point. Once the reed is open, there's an invisible point beyond the tip of the reed where the two blades would technically intersect. So this vanishing point, or whatever you want to call it, is an absolute reed truth for me and keeps me with a very clear sense of what I'm doing.
Well, yeah, this was something I wanted to talk about in the sessions, the physics of an oboe. It's a conical bore, and the reed has to function as both the generator of the sound, and it has to close completely, actually, to generate the sound. It oscillates because you're blowing air, and by Bernoulli's principle, the reed closes at the tip, and then the airflow stops, and the pressure inside returns to normal, and then it springs open again. I'll make a drawing when we get into this on the whiteboard. But briefly, it's the same principle that causes airplanes to fly, where you have a curve on the top of the wing and a straight plane on the bottom of the wing. So the principle is that a moving stream of a gas will reduce the pressure on the surface that it is moving across. So if you have the air going on the top of the wing moving faster than the air on the bottom of the wing, the pressure is less, so there's lift. It's the air pressure on the bottom side of the wing that lifts the airplane. Likewise, it's the moving stream of air that goes down the middle of the reed that closes the reed and makes it vibrate because it oscillates. And then the reed also has to function as the beginning of the resonator, which is why different dimensions within the reed and in the staple will cause different partials to be truncated, so you can get a high register, or make different partials be sharper or flatter.
So by resonator, you're basically talking about the oboe itself. The oboe itself
Well,
is.
yeah, except the reed is the beginning of the bore, as well as the oscillator or the generator. Again, we can maybe make a drawing of this later on.
How does this relate to an absolute reed truth for you?
Well, I'm similar to what you were saying. I think of an imaginary apex of the cone that is somewhat longer than the tip. So whatever structure you build into the reed has to make that cone formable as easily as possible. So I'll take more off the sides progressively coming up towards the tip. So the sides close more easily, forming a cone more easily with less force. You need less airspeed to get the reed to close.
So do you have some strategies for dealing with the traveling that you do and maintaining the adaptability and possibility to quickly set yourself up to be successful in any given new situation?
Well, you try to predict what the climate is going to be and also the altitude of where you're going. So if I'm going to high altitude, I'll try to have looser, more vibrant reeds because I know they're going to kind of choke down in high altitude. Also, the oboe itself can change as humidity changes, and a long plane flight can suck the humidity out of an instrument. So I'll always put my instruments in a plastic bag with a sponge of some kind during the flight, and then take it out when I arrive so it can return to whatever the humidity is. As before, I try to have a bunch of choices so I'm not dependent on one particular reed that played beautifully at home, be it necessarily playing as well where I'm going. We have this kind of situation in LA where I'm in the valley, which is relatively dry, but if I have a job down on the coast in Santa Monica or Long Beach or something, then the humidity can be 20 or 30 points higher there. So a reed that played very easily at home can have a gigantic opening, and I'm chomping away. And it took me a couple of years to figure out that I had to be prepared for that, even driving 20 miles away.
So how do you
There can
prepare?
be a different microclimate.
What is your strategy for preparing a coastal reed from your valley home?
Well, I want it to feel closed and puny at home, and then it will feel bigger and that I'm not struggling.
What are your most important reed making tools?
I use 4 different scraping tools, actually. I have a Kurugi beveled knife for rough work, and then a Graf folding knife for overall work, and a Kurugi double hollow ground for tip work. And then I use a Reed Geek, which is, this is the Reed Geek. I don't know if you can see that. But I find this to be very nice for smoothing out small areas where the knife might catch. This has I don't know, it's kind of, you never have to sharpen it. It has these 90-degree angles, and it's a clever idea, whoever thought it up. One other equipment thing that, or practice thing that people might be interested in is I use a 4,000 grit diamond stone to maintain my edges.
On all of those, even on the Graf knife?
Yes. I try not to let it get dull enough to do anything else. And hone them at quite a steep angle. It's 60 or 70 degrees. So there's a burr that's going quite forward. So I can remove small amounts of cane with little pressure.
How do you maintain your angle when you're sharpening?
Just by hand. I do like the fine diamond stone. It keeps it nicely polished, and I've had the same one for 5 years now, and it still works. It's almost a burnishing process.
Mm-hmm.
John Ferrillo, who he's principal oboe in Boston, who also has a reed business out of his house. Ordered a bunch of these and put cute little rubber feet on them, and he sells them. They're about $90, but they're worth it, I find.
Yeah, yeah.
And as long as you maintain it, it lasts a long time. I can scrape for several days without on any of these knives without resharpening. It has to do with the angle. I think the principle is similar to the Reed Geek, where it doesn't have so much to do with maintaining an edge as maintaining the direction of the edge,
Mm-hmm.
and just keeping it from getting too rough.
Mm-hmm.
If my knife skills are working well, I can hold the reed up to the light as an angle and it's shiny.
All right, so Steve, I'm going to wrap up our interview for now. I want to ask you one last important question. You stay very busy and engaged, and you're one of the most curious people I've encountered. You just always are looking and searching for new things. When you look back and regard your career and your life, is there something you're most proud of?
What's kind of fun, actually, is to hear something on the radio or a recording that somebody has and say, "Oh, I like that oboe playing," and realize that I'd forgotten all about it, but it was a concert that I played. That occasionally happens. I think to be a successful oboe player, you have to have a certain amount of arrogance and to believe that there's really only one best way to play something, and that you know what it is. I mean, it's totally misguided, but still, it's an important part of our psychological makeup. Actually, that's that's when you're talking about something that you look back on with fondness is when there were situations where there was a successful negotiation among equally vehement points of view, and you arrive at something that pleased everybody. It's wonderful when that happens. I mean, it just happens sometimes where you try somebody else's idea and you say, wow, that was even better. Or you try some synthesis of your two ideas and you say, oh, it was really good.
Yeah, that's really
So,
satisfying.
I mean, that's related to curiosity. I think we need to keep continuously evolving in our belief systems and our desires. And as long as you're still doing that, then we don't get old and it doesn't get old.